But anyway, whatever comes next on the IMDb list couldn't possibly be worse than this. If the list stays the same by the time I come to this series again, and so do all the streaming rights or whatever, that would mean that my next one would be some Indian movie I've never heard of called Adipurush, which is streaming on Netflix. It's apparently almost 3 hours long, which doesn't look good, but at the same time it looks like an action movie, which should at least make it entertaining. Yes, I may be wrong, but I'm still 90% sure that this 3-hour movie would still feel shorter than this 2-hour monstrosity. Well, not much has changed. I mean, it kinda did. We even got a brand new movie here. Welcome, Ice Cube. Another movie even got between these two. The Cost of Deception. Another movie I haven't heard of. And it's not streaming anywhere. No, not on any service that I have, or not on any free streaming service. Straight up nowhere in the United States. Not even to rent it. So that's out of the question. But so far as I know, the streaming rights in this area have not changed at the time of me writing this, so we're on to what's still number 30 on the IMDb Bottom 100. The 3-hour failed epic Adipurush. The movie so bad that it briefly got all Indian movies banned in parts of Nepal. More on that later. Ha, I got you. Now you're gonna have to watch the end to see what I'm talking about. So does it feel shorter than the 2-hour 365 days this day? Well, we'll see. Although I will say that as bad as it is, it still can't come close to reaching the awfulness of that movie. In fact, this is probably still going to rank among the better of all the terrible movies that I've seen for this show. But I might get backlash for saying this because it was so controversial. I'm pretty sure that since I'm talking about an Indian film that doesn't appear to be too well known in the Western world, a lot of people clicking on this will be from India. I'm not as well versed in Indian religion, language, and culture, so I don't really know a whole lot about just how offensive this was. All I know is that in a show where watching something like Catwoman is a win for me, the bar is very low. But yes, I have seen a few Indian movies. No, not just RRR. In fact, that wasn't even the first one I saw from that director, as I had already watched his 2-part saga Bahubali before. I know the style that's popular in modern Indian action movies, and I've really liked that style, and I've seen enough to know that this isn't as good at it. If this was my first Indian blockbuster, I'd probably praise it for being so different and more ambitious than Hollywood action movies, but now that I know that's just the common style for that country, whatever. On to the background info. Adipurush is a loose retelling of the Hindi epic Ramayana. As the text at the beginning of the movie states, it takes some liberties and should not be viewed as a source for information about the story. In hindsight, that may have been its downfall in a way. The story had been adapted many times before, but this one stems from when an engineering student by the name of Om Raut saw a screening of the 1992 Japanese anime movie Ramayana: The Legend of Prince Rama back in the early 2000s. He enjoyed it so much that he started asking himself why Indian people aren't adapting their own mythology as well as these foreigners had. In the years since, he had switched degrees to study film and television, became an actual filmmaker, and had made a couple successful movies, most notably Tanhaji the Unsung Warrior from 2020. Then, in that same year, he decided to go back to that long gestating idea of telling the legend of Ramayana with modern technology. He wrote it during the COVID lockdowns with dialogue written by Manoj Muntashir. And speaking of the Bahubali movies, its famed star Prabhas was interested in starring, and the production company T-Series was interested in producing, with Raut set to direct. It was announced in the August of that year, 2020, via an online poster. It was given a budget of 500 to 600 crore, or roughly 66 to 80 million dollars American, making it one of the most expensive Indian movies ever made. It filmed in Mumbai the following year, shot in both Hindi and Telugu languages at the same time, and also filmed in 3D. During production, a fire occurred at the filming locations, but the sets were repaired. Production wrapped up in the November of that year, but then the nightmare really started. It was set for release in the August of 2022, but was pushed back to January after the movie Lal Singh Chadha was moved to that date. The first trailer came out in the October before, and people finally got to see the marvels of what such a huge budget can bring.
आ रहा हूं अधर्म का विध्वंस।
So, basically everybody hated it. And not just for those effects, although that was a huge part of it. Also for having the main character of Raghava, as played by Prabhas, look different from the way that he is traditionally displayed, including his beard, makeup, and leather jackets. And his style was also accused of being too much of a ripoff of American movies like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and certain shots were accused of being copied from Game of Thrones, Planet of the Apes, and The Jungle Book. About the reactions to those effects, Raut defended it by claiming that his work was not meant to be watched on a phone. I'm pretty sure those effects would be even more noticeable in a theater, but whatever. But despite that, the film was sent back to the cutting room floor to fix the effects, which brought the budget up to 550 to 800 crore, or 73 to 106 million dollars US, and also led to the film being pushed back yet again to June. Also, in the wake of all those controversies, an animation company called Venar Sena Studios accused their poster of plagiarizing the poster for their movie Lord Shiva. But of course, one poster controversy wasn't enough for them, so they put out another controversial one in March of 2023. Movie fans criticized it for looking like an animated film, and religious groups noticed that many of the characters shown were not wearing a sacred thread-colored genou, which all the characters in the legend are described as having worn. Also, there's more controversies to go, but we'll save that for later. 2 more trailers were since released, and they were both seen as an improvement on the first one, at least in terms of the special effects. It was set to have its world premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival, but that screening was cancelled at the last minute. No reason was given, but people have speculated that it may have been due to the quality of the film and the reaction to the effects of the teaser. Also, it was set for an IMAX release, but surprise, even more stuff didn't go their way. IMAX apparently only allows one movie to premiere in their format per day, and that slot was already taken by The Flash. Yes, ironically, The Flash got to that date faster. But now on to the review. Yeah, the effects are still pretty bad. Yes, they did fix it, but it turns out you can only go so far. There are parts that don't even look finished yet. To their credit, there are actually a few shots that look decent, but for every one of them, even in the same sequence, there's another one that looks terrible to balance things out. This may have had a huge budget, but they have not put it to good use. Maybe they just shouldn't have used it so much, because there are scenes of the characters standing in the wilderness that look like they're using green screen. Is it really that difficult to find a forest or something? My entire bank account is barely a fraction of a percentile of this movie's budget, and I can drive somewhere with trees and film there. It's cheaper than CGI. Why are you just throwing away money? But whatever. The movie starts with our bad guy, the evil King Lancash, thousands of years ago in a snowy CGI landscape. He isn't wearing a shirt, possibly because even he knows the snow is CGI and he won't freeze to death. Anyway, one of the gods come down and give him a gift where he can never be killed. And then, as part of that, he grows 9 more floating heads. A design that looks pretty dumb with these effects. Yes, it's true to the way he looks in Art of Him, but here the way it's done is not good. In Hindu art, he looks like a god. Here, he looks like a weirdo surrounded by floating heads. This shot from the teaser trailer looks bad, but it's probably one of the rare shots where the heads actually look like they're part of the same body. Anyway, we get our hero Raghava, who's living in the woods in exile. The first time we see him, he's fighting a swarm of demons made of possibly the worst CGI in the entire movie. I do not remember the scene looking any different than it does in the teaser. But that is a lot of demons. He must be very strong to hold them all off for so long. Actually, not so much, considering all they do is just fly around him in a circle while occasionally some will fly at him one at a time. But then eventually the story starts. Lankesh's sister tries to seduce Raghava, and when he says no, she tries to kill his wife. But he stops her and in the process cuts off her nose. But this angers Lankesh, and it turns out he's the real problem, seeing as how she was defeated easily, but it takes 3 hours of movie to defeat him. He also decides to target the wife and kidnaps her. Now Raghava must get an army together to take him down and save the love of his life. And the rest of it should be familiar to anybody who's seen any Indian action epic of the past few years. Buff men and really over-the-top action sequences with a few songs thrown in there for good measure. The only difference is that it has far worse special effects. With any shot in this movie, it's a 50-50 chance of getting a decent enough CGI shot or something absolutely terrible. As I've said a few times before, it's almost 3 hours long, which is pretty common for movies like this from India to be really long. And to this movie's credit, it doesn't feel as slow as a lot of 3-hour movies from other countries, but at the same time, it also could have been shorter. I don't know if I would believe that if it looked as epic as it wants to be, but it doesn't, so wrap things up. It's 3 hours long and kind of feels like it, which I guess is better than a movie that's 2 hours long and feels like 4 hours. The script is okay, I guess. It's serviceable, at least from my ignorant American perspective, but it's also nothing special. I say from my ignorant American perspective because the script is apparently a lot worse if you speak the language. I'm going to have to mention some of the controversies early so that I can comment on them. No, not the Nepal one yet. First of all, there's the controversies from religious groups that basically boil down to some of the liberties they've taken and how they are portraying these sacred figures. I don't really care that much about that. As a Christian, I don't care that much about the last temptation of Christ straying even further from the story of Christ. Obviously many others do, but I'm not one of them. I'm just viewing these movies as individual art. The controversy I want to mention, and the reason I say it's worse if you speak the language, is the dialogue. It's apparently not period accurate, even going so far as to use modern day Indian slang terms. I do not speak the language, so I did not notice this. It wasn't mentioned in the subtitles, and even if it was, even if a character said that an Indian god had mad riz or something, I would have probably blamed the people who wrote the subtitles had I not known. So I guess those subtitle writers were smart to not write it exactly as it was said. Or maybe they did because dialogue writer Manoj Muntashir has since decided to change the dialogue after the uproar. Even though earlier he had defended this language, saying he needed to make the characters not sound exactly the same and saying that this is the language you hear when people tell the legend. I'm not sure if I buy that, but the point is that I don't know which version of the movie I got, so I'm even less qualified to criticize the dialogue. I'm judging by the story and plot progression, etc., and from that angle, it's okay, but not great enough to justify the runtime. Anyway, you can make the argument that it's ripping off American films or whatever. I don't care. Every film is inspired by some other film. Of course, the 3-hour fantasy epic is going to get comparisons to The Lord of the Rings. The thing I care about is that it doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings. It's not as epic as it wants to be. It looks like a 3-hour sci-fi channel movie, and the script feels like a Marvel movie you forget about the second you walk out of the theater, from my ignorant American perspective. I couldn't even bring myself to hate it. I had to think before I gave it a dislike on Netflix. Aside from the special effects, dialogue, and the depictions of the religious figures, it's just kind of a nothing movie. But anyway, it opened on the 16th of June 2023, and it did some big numbers. For exactly one weekend. After that, things went south right away. Thanks to poor word of mouth, and Monday after that, its earnings fell 75%. In the end, from a budget of at least 500 crore, it ended up making 350 to 392.7 crore. Or $46.7 to $52.4 million US. Then, of course, came even more controversy. Even the modern dialogue was considered blasphemous, as many religious groups didn't like the fact that the gods were talking like that. That's right, the movie's dialogue was so bad that it caused a moral panic. Manoj Muntashi defended the movie by saying that they weren't trying to modernize the story, but tell it the way that people had heard it in their childhood. However, he later said that it's a completely different story that's just inspired by Ramayan. And in another unrelated but controversial interview, he said, Lord Hanuman is not God, but a mere devotee. We made him God because his devotion had that power. Which led to outrage because not everybody agrees that he isn't a god. Anyway, the movie was condemned by the Allahabad High Court, and the petition was filed to remove it from streaming services. And one Indian political party went so far as to try to get the police involved. But probably no reaction was as extreme as the one in Nepal. Yes, we're at that point now. They took issue with one line in the movie. The character of Sita is referred to as the daughter of India. That status is a little controversial. Records show that she was born in the region of Mithila, but they differ as to where in that region. Many Indians believe it is in what's now Sitamarhi, Bihar, which is part of India, but many Nepalese people believe it was in Janakpur Medesh province, which is in Nepal. And Nepal didn't like them saying she wasn't born in their country. Some regions banned the movie, while others, like Kathmandu, didn't stoop that low. No, they banned all Hindi movies. However, a court in Nepal has since lifted those bans. For a movie as controversial as this, it's hard to know for sure if it's really that bad or it just got onto this list because people were offended by it. Well, I think that yes, it would have probably made it on anyway. It was a major expensive blockbuster, and it's actually kind of impressive how bad it looks. The Indian people are evidently very passionate about blockbuster films, and they would have probably put it on here, controversy or not. But in all honesty, I think the story of its controversies and how basically everybody found some reason to hate it since its first trailer is far more interesting than the movie itself or anything I can say about it. I guess it's entertaining enough in a bad movie type of way to reach number 5. Yeah, top 5. But then again, that's still lower than every other 2-star movie on this list except for The Flintstones and Viva Rock Vegas, so you decide whether this rating works in the movie's favor or not.